welcome to this month's audio production town hall. We're glad you could join us. Each month you'll find us spouting off on all kinds of different topics related to audio production, from making records to sound for film and games, and beyond. We hope you'll plan to join us regularly, but if you should miss the session, you'll be able to find an archive recording at the same link. Today we'll be talking about Foley, which is, I started reading right off the card. Today we're talking about AutoTune, vocal tuning and all things tuning. I am joined today by my good friend Jon Schmedinghoff and Henrik Bridger from Antares. Henrik's wired in all the way from Santa Cruz, California, where our good friend Jon here joined us just up the street in Maitland, right? Or is that, yeah? Oviedo, right. Florida. So Jon is also an alumnus, a 2009, was it?
2007, recording arts.
Yeah, I'm close on both.
I know.
2007 recording arts graduates. So here we have somebody that went through the program just as you all are going through, and went on to end up going to do some cool things, and now works with Antares. So today, I guess we could talk a little bit about Jon, if you want to tell us how life's been for you post Full Sail, and how you ended up at Antares and all that good stuff for the students.
Absolutely. So started at Full Sail back in 2006 doing recording arts program. Finished in 2007, did some corporate AV work at a hotel here locally. Then went on to work as a tech support agent at Avid, supporting Pro Tools, which was a really wonderful experience. Took a little bit of time off and got into IT, worked at Rollins College, another local place here. And then about 4 years ago, I had the opportunity to join Henrik at Antares and started as a support technician, and senior revenue operations manager and head of partnerships at Antares. It's, I pinch myself.
Cool. There you go. It's very cool.
It's awesome path. So happy to be back at Full Sail.
That's great. And Henrik, do you want to tell us a little bit about what you do at Antares from day to day? We can't hear you. You got to unmute. You got him muted. I'm sorry. 1 sec, Henrik. Are you good now, Henrik? Can we hear you?
Am I good now?
There we go. Sorry about that. What's up, Henrik?
No, it's okay. So, just like Jon, I started actually in support many years ago. I had a bunch of different positions, but right now I am part of the QA team here, trying to break our software when we release new versions or new updates or whatever. But yeah, so mostly I do QA, but sometimes I'm doing things like this or go to trade shows and things. Yeah.
Very cool. Like that. Well, I really appreciate both of you joining us here today. And before we get going with walking through the software, Henrik's going to show some of the bells and whistles and in and outs of Antares today. Just, as many of you students here that go through audio production, we show you, we kind of give you the basics of working with tuning and working with singers, and it's really an art form that I think everybody will agree with. It's a skill that you're going to work on for the rest of your life. Some of you might be really good at tuning the first time you jump into a plugin like AutoTune or Melodyne or whatever tool you're using. And some of you might have to really work at it. And personally, myself, I was privileged growing up. I had a bunch of music lessons. I had ear training in college. I've been a musician most of my life. And guess what happened the first time I used AutoTune? I butchered it. I didn't make it sound like what was appropriate for the genre. And that's kind of the first thing you sort of have to ask yourself is what sort of a musical genre are you working in? Because a lot of times that's going to dictate how much or how little or how heavily you use tuning correction or pitch correction. And now, as we've gotten into the 2000s and beyond, tuning is more so an effect sometimes that it is even used for its original intended use, which was pitch correction. So I think Henrik's going to guide us through a little bit of both of that today. And I guess we'll go ahead and switch it over to our guy Henrik here, and if he wants to share his screen, and we'll double check and make sure we got his audio, and then we can get a nice walk through AutoTune here.
How does that work?
That looks great, and we can hear you too.
Oh, that's good. I like that. Let's see. Yes. Do we have audio?
Well, when you think you got it
Yes, sir.
all
We can hear it.
together.
All right. Well, I guess when you before using AutoTune or I think any pitch correction program, one thing that I guess is maybe a little bit of a personal thing about it, but I think it's like any other plugins, whether it's an EQ or compressor or reverb or whatever. It's like the point is to enhance something here, and all I feel is like do no harm. Just make it sound better or worse, unless it's that for an intended purpose. But just do no harm to the music as it is. That doesn't mean like you can't blast AutoTune on it and get the effect if you want that, or if it's a style that doesn't require the effect, make it subtle and clean sounding, because AutoTune is definitely capable of doing anything from hard effect to completely transparent where you should not hear that it's been applied. So let's see. I'm going to start with an example that we have used here at work for years and years, but it's a good example because it's very, very out of tune. Oops, did not want to fade there. All right, so here is an example. Let's zoom in on that a little bit. Oops. There we go. So this first example is I have bypass AutoTune on it, so it's not going to be applied. So here's just a little sample of what it sounds like. So
Somewhere over the rainbow, skies are blue. There's a place that I heard of once in a lullaby.
right. So obviously that's very, very out of tune here and there.
Yeah. No.
So
Yep. Go ahead. Sorry.
yeah. So the way I obviously the effect, probably an AutoTune effect or very tuned, probably wouldn't be so good in this situation. But so I'm going to show how to do it in automatic mode, what I would do, and then I'll show a little bit of graphical mode as well. But she's singing in G major, so I've added G major here to the scale. Let's bypass this. And she is an alto, so I left it at the default setting, which is alto tenor. So here you set, actually, let me do this.
And that's a new feature with the latest AutoTune, right? Is being able to size the window like that?
Yeah, we've had that for a little bit, and you could do it manually before, which was kind of a pain because, it's easier to just want to drag it when you need it.
Yes.
So anyway, here's your input types that you have: soprano, alto, tenor, low male, instrument and bass, instruments. And then I left it on alto tenor because that's what she is. And I happen to know that she's singing in G major, as I mentioned. And so the key here for AutoTune, you will find that the retune speed is the most important control, really. It sets how fast AutoTune tunes the audio in milliseconds. Nothing else. This is what this number equals milliseconds. So 0 milliseconds will give you the AutoTune effect, and if you slow it down, you will get it less and less tuning apply or slower and more transparent sounding. So something like this, I would probably start, the default is 20 milliseconds, which in this case would be too fast. I think you would hear it too much. So I would probably back it down maybe to somewhere between 50 and 80. You could try it somewhere around here. And this will get you a long way without moving too many other knobs. This should sound pretty good. So just a reminder where we started. We'll play this little beginning part.
Somewhere over the rainbow.
Obviously, this note here is very out of tune, but we can fix that now. So here is with it on.
Somewhere over the rainbow.
It didn't take very much to get it fairly in tune. If you want it more, even more nuanced, you can add a little bit of humanize, which this parameter lets through. On held notes, it will let through some of the vibrato more than if it's off. So if you turn it off a little bit, it's subtle, but it's there. You will get a little bit more variation on the vibrato.
Somewhere over the rainbow.
I hear a little bit on that last one. To me, that's too much. I would back that off because I feel like I want to hear it a little bit more in tune. That's really how I do transparent pitch correction. If there are a lot of bends in the audio, I might turn this one up because this will, flex tune will let the note, if there are two notes, say a G and a G sharp, and you have a tone that you have 50 cents on each side of the center of the note before it becomes closer to the G sharp, or if you go down the G flat. When you turn flex tune off, it shrinks that and opens up a space between the notes where it doesn't tune. So if there's slides or bends in the vocals, or if it's an instrument like a guitar solo, you can just turn this up and it will let go on those bends and just not tune until it gets closer to the next pitch. So that's what this one does. So if you were to do flex tune all the way up, that will actually not apply any tuning. It will bypass it essentially.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, a little bit of this can go a long way, especially with bends. This particular piece probably wouldn't really do too much for that because there's no bends in this piece. Let's see. What else I was going to show? Oh, actually, I will do that on the next audio example. But what about questions? Are there any questions now, or do those come at the end?
I think we're going to do them at the end, but if there is one now, we could take one. Or
Yeah, it just.
Yeah, nothing yet. I do have a question though.
Yeah.
Flex tune.
Yeah.
Sometimes when I explain it, you can tell me if this is wrong. Flex tune seems a little bit similar to strength quantize, like when you're quantizing a rhythmic note. Like, is it with flex tune, if it detects something that's like pretty close in pitch, will it kind of leave it alone? Whereas if it's a note that's a little farther out or away from that center, like you said, then it might bring it in, something that's farther out, the more that you apply, or is it more towards the bends like you were saying?
It is the bends. It's whatever, like, you know, if you have the two pitches and you have, like, actually, if you look at the scale display here, if you turn this now, it's just going to tune it to, you know, the dead center here.
The absolute, yeah.
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 Depending on how fast your retune is set.
Okay.
But if you turn this up a little bit, say, whatever, it's going to let go out at the ends.
Okay.
So you have your 50 cents on each side of the note, you know, before it goes, say, from a G to a G sharp or a G to a G flat. It will open up in this area here. So if somebody bends it like a quarter tone, it wouldn't, at this point, if somebody sings a perfect quarter tone off or bends it, this will make it so it doesn't adjust until it gets closer to the note, like in this area. Does that make sense?
That's where the term flexibility comes from. Instead of being rigid and make it tune straight to the zero, the more flex tune you apply, it's going to give more leeway.
Yeah, on this
side of the pitch. Yeah,
you have to be closer to the zero in order for AutoTune to grab the pitch. So think about it like actually this is where the technology came from. It came from a guitar product we had very briefly, but it's like if you bend a pitch on the guitar, you want it to bend, right?
Bend it back. Yeah.
If you have your fret here and the fret here, and you bend it in between, once it gets close to the frets or the pitch of whatever fret's supposed to be, then it'll bring it in pitch, but it will leave it alone when you bend in between.
I see. Okay, so this makes sense because a lot of times when a singer approaches a note, many times they'll swoop into the note or come from above and swoop down. So that helps alleviate if they're in between, say that C and a B, it's not going to touch it to the B until it gets closer to the center of the note.
That's it.
That makes sense. Thank you. I've been teaching this for, 12 years now, and I think I've been given a little bit different definition of that, but I'm glad we got clarification on that. Does that help what the student asked? That the student wanted clarification on that?
They're looking for clarification on having to know the key the person's in to start with.
That's a great question. Okay, so we have a question. How important is it to know the key of the song that you're working with when tuning vocals with AutoTune?
It's important because if they're singing very diatonically or, in the key of the song, you may want to try to avoid it tuning to the pitches that are outside the key. So if here in G major, you don't want it perhaps to tune it to a G sharp unless there is a G sharp in it, and that's a different story. But so it's the way to do this. We have a little standalone application or standalone plugin here. I'll bring it up, which I prefer to put on either the master bus on a mix, or you can put it on a piano or a guitar track.
Something that has harmony to it, something that's polyphonic.
Yes. The chords, or if there's like in a hip hop track, if there's only a lead track with stereo lead track, put it on that so you can take it out of the music that's playing along with the vocals.
Well, with hip hop these days, the only pitch you're going to get is out of that 808 kick. So.
Well, yeah.
Or the two-note piano, but no. Sometimes you might not have a lot of harmonic content there, but. The auto key, this is what you're bringing up, because all our students in audio production get the auto key along with the AutoTune Pro.
Yeah, and why is my auto key not showing for some reason? That's weird. Why isn't it showing? Let me look at something here quickly. Apologize for that. Where did this go?
And so for those of you students watching right now in audio production, everybody in audio production, as part of your launch box, you receive AutoTune, a perpetual license for AutoTune Pro. So whatever version of AutoTune you were given the license for, you own that in perpetuity. On top of that, I believe you're given a 6-month a subscription package as well that you could start at any time. That gives you the full suite of AutoTune plugins. There's more to the Antares suite than just AutoTune. There's a whole bunch of plugins that comes with the suite that you can activate as well. All right, Henrik.
All right, I think I got it now.
He's got it. Cool.
Come on. Show up. It should show up here in a second. Let me.
Sure. What's the question?
Oh.
you want to tell me that question while Henrik's sorting this out?
It's in there.
So somebody is wondering what the importance of FlexTune is.
The importance of FlexTune, as Henrik was explaining, is if you have notes that bend between the pitches. So instead of just going, Mary had a little lamb, if you're going, Mary, if you're sweeping down or up, if we're going in between those pitches, FlexTune will allow it so AutoTune doesn't take it right to the center of that pitch. If you're going between a C and a D, if you have it set without the flexibility, it's only going to let it allow the pitch to live on that C or the D. It's not going to let it bend between. And for those of you that have taken my class, it's not till the end of the program, month 26, that's something that we focus on a lot when we're looking at the sung vowels. If she's swooping into the note or coming down into the note, those bends, and especially if you're using a quicker retune speed, you're probably going to have to add a little bit of that flexibility so it isn't so stepped sounding, so it doesn't go, it sound pitch quantized to where it's going to those exact notes. It's going to allow it to slide between those pitches. So hopefully that helps you a little bit. How are we doing over here, Henrik? Oh, we got it. Cool.
We got it up.
Yeah.
Some reason it wasn't installed on my system, which is usually is.
There we go. That's engineering, though. Figuring stuff out, though. So we have it figured out, and all right, the auto key.
There we go. All right, so here we have AutoTune. Where did my auto key go now? Okay. There we go. So this plugin, if you put it on the master bus, as I did here, I am going to set it on something else. I'm just going to set it to the default setting of AutoTune, which is C chromatic. I'm going to play the song again. And so what you do, you just instantiate auto key. It's going to say waiting for transport, and then you play.
Somewhere
It analyzes.
over the rainbow.
And there it found G major as the key of the song. And to get it into AutoTune, all you do is push this button down here, says send to AutoTune. So when I click this, this is going to update to G major, and then you have your key and scale. There you go.
So that's nice too if you had like 8 AutoTune plugins up. You could
Correct.
set
It will send to every instance of AutoTune in your, in your session, whether it's AutoTune Pro or any other version,
That's nice.
and plugins like Harmony Engine, which also relies on harmonies.
Oh, cool.
Yeah. And then you also have the chance you can use a file. If you have a file, but you don't know what the key and it's not in your session, you can drop it on the plugin or open it up here and select what file you want to put on it. Or you can, if you know what the key is, but you have 20 instances and you want to send them to all, you can just open here and select your key and scale. And so if I set it to G major here, it says this was something else, for example. And now I set it manually, then I'll just do this again and it'll update it. It's a very handy plugin that way. And then once you're done, you can either leave it in your session, or I usually just bypass it so it doesn't take any resources. All right. How are we doing on time? There we go. So the next thing I wanted to mention, and it was for another piece of audio. Here we go. Here's another instance. And something that is very popular in AutoTune these days is this mode over here. We get a lot of questions of that because we had 2 different versions of the algorithm that did the tuning. And the classic is obviously the older one. And it was everything that was AutoTune 5 and earlier had a slightly different sound than the newer algorithm that's been used since AutoTune 6. And even though 6 made it cleaner and actually more accurate sounding, people like the way this sounds. It's very subtle what it does, but it adds a little sheen to stuff. So if you engage this, it'll take out things that weren't in the plugin at the time. So there's no format correction, no transpose, and no flex tune. And so now basically we're sitting here with AutoTune 5. So I'm going to crank it because to hear it kind of AutoTune, when AutoTune is really heavily applied, that's kind of when you hear it. So if you listen to this with a modern algorithm, just a few R's here. So here we go.
Well, when you think you got.
I have the wrong key because I sent it with auto key. Let me fix that. It's actually G sharp minor, this piece. There we go. Let's try that again.
Well, when you think you got it all together is when you find that it's falling apart.
That's the modern algorithm, and here's the classic, which people love. It's gonna be hard to hear, but if you listen to the high frequencies, you may hear it.
Well, when you think you got it all together is when you find that it's falling apart. You can't count on the ground you stand on. You're walking around like you're in the dark.
Can we hear the modern one more time?
Yeah.
Please.
Well, when you think you got it all together is when you find that it's falling apart.
With?
Well, when you think you got it all together is when you find that it's falling apart.
Yeah.
It's subtle, but it's there.
Yeah, it's a bit more. To me, it has a bit more of just that electronic step sound. The older rap.
Yeah,
the newer
it
ones
will
sound
enhance
smoother.
that.
Yeah.
All right. The next thing I wanted to show was how to use graphical mode. And let me find, here we have another audio example. And here we have, so when you open up AutoTune, it looks like this. And then we have the graphical editor here, which you make bigger. What you need to do to make this work is actually record the audio or track it into here so you can then start fiddling with it. So you can do pitch only or pitch and time. And for this example, I'm going to do pitch because that's what we do the most of. So I'm going to record a few measures of this vocal. Let's see.
In the dark.
Oops. That was not what I wanted to do. There we go. Let me solo that track. Okay, here we go.
I'm a living life free.
Do track pitch first. There we go.
I'm a living life free. Nobody owns me. So now what you gonna do? I'm breaking those chains. Step out and help me now. I'm coming back for you.
All right. So I chose this example because she has a pretty big vibrato. And if you just apply AutoTune on it, it's going to be hard to do this automatically with these big, let me zoom in here. Like here where her vibrato, this is a whole note here. So she goes a whole half step up and down. So if we just tune that, it's going to sound very peculiar. So that's where I feel like doing it graphically will be apply cleaner tuning to it, and you don't make it sound stylistically probably not inaccurate for this type of vocal. So you can use key and scale here too. She happens to be in E flat minor. I'm just going to put it in, but I probably won't use it because I want to use just the various drawing tools. So if we look here, she's the first note that she's singing is an E flat, so she's singing a root, but she's kind of, if you can see this slide here. So the red curves, by the way, show the original audio, and they will always be there for reference, the red curves. So we have a few different ways of doing this. You can draw lines, curves, and notes. So a line looks like this. And then you can set the individual retune speed like you did outside in automatic mode individually over here. Let me go back. Let's clear that out. And then the curve just does also that. You basically you can draw freehand anywhere, which of course is going to sound so good. There we go. And then we have notes, which is usually the default setting. So you draw a note which shows, the note here, and then it shows how the curve in here, you can see how much it's tuned it. So if I slow that down, it goes back to the original, and then it goes fast. Now it's going to be a hard tune effect. So in a vocal like this, I would probably be very careful because there are slides that you want to preserve. So for example, here, I accidentally set the scale back to normal. There we go. So the first note she's singing is E flat, and she's actually a little sharp when she slides in all the way up to the G flat, which is actually goes a little sharp with these two notes. So in this case, I would use the note control, and I would put just a tiny note around here so the beginning of the note is tuned, but then we'll you see the green curve here will be the output pitch curve. And this is a little sharp here, but this is close to being in the middle, so I would then go in here and just draw a note in the beginning of this note to bring that note down. And here where she goes flat, I would probably draw this one a little longer. And then due to the vibrato and that she is kind of in tune, I would leave that alone and then listen to it. And then here on this note, she goes to an F, down a half step, and she's actually flat. You can see she's almost at an E. So that will just do a little bit of touch up here with the note. So if you listen to this is going to be subtle, but it's going to tighten it up a little bit. So if we bypass it first.
I'm a living life free, no. I'm a living life free.
Sounds pretty nice as it is, but if you put this on now.
I'm a living life free, no.
Very subtle, but it's more in tune and without really doing much, but it's when you hear it with the music later on, which I don't have the whole session, unfortunately, you will hear that it just glues better with the chordal instruments and the harmonies and everything else.
And with vocal tuning, subtle is usually good. I mean, like subtle,
yes.
If you induce something too drastic, that's where it's going to sound, you've changed the melody, you've moved it a half step, or it's going to induce, an AutoTune glitch of some sorts. But basically, just to reiterate, you're going through with the note tool, and you're selecting individual notes, and each of those notes are given the same retune speed.
There's a default value on the notes. So if I'll choose. This one is a little bit slower because I changed that, but let's go back. So the default is 10 milliseconds, which sounds fast, but it's because you draw it and you don't draw it straight over everything, which you could, suppose if you want. But here on this one, I would probably maybe bring that up a little bit.
So it defaults to 10, and then select each note, and you can individually adjust the retune. That's great. I believe we have a question.
One of our viewers is wondering, is AutoTune added to most or all vocals to some degree?
All right, so the viewer wants to know, is AutoTune or pitch correction added to most vocals that we hear these days in popular music?
I would think most, yes.
I would say most top 20 that we hear. Is there's a
Yeah.
little, to what degree it's applied is up to the producer and the artist, but
Yes.
I would be willing to bet that most of it is.
Yeah.
And
And I mean,
go ahead.
you
sorry.
can sometimes hear it. I think even, if you hear two singers singing together, for example, and they sound perfectly in pitch, which is very difficult to do if you're two singers,
Yes.
they are perfectly in tune. Oftentimes, I think they perhaps overtuned it in those situations.
Or if you're hearing a real lack of vibrato sometimes.
There's another one.
It's
Yeah. that would
so
do it.
smooth. Or another one I like to equate it to is if it feels like they're pushing keys on a synthesizer, where it sounds like,
Yeah.
whoa, it's like a block chord on a piano, and it sounds so perfect, because humans
Yeah.
and nature in general isn't perfect, but it can be subtle too when you use. I think, I'm not saying it's wrong to tune harder than another artist. It's really a production decision, and in
Yeah.
this day and age, I mean, now we've been noticing in the top 20 when we listen to our class, especially in hip hop, they're putting stuff out of tune in the music bed on purpose. And so then
Yes.
if you're trying to center something with AutoTune against, it may say a bass line that's a little out of tune, or what they really love to do is like a Rhodes keyboard or a certain sample, they'll detune it on purpose. So now you got to worry about, okay, if I center it, is it working with some of the stuff that's not intonated in the music track? So
True.
I guess
Yeah.
the long answer is yes, mostly there is tuning, and it's to varying degree depending on the genre and the artist.
Yeah.
Great question.
Let me see here. I'm just gonna do a couple more notes here because I wanted to, so you can hear more of it. But so if you continue here to look here, so this note next here, because it's in E flat, here's where the note should be if it's perfectly in tune, but she's slightly flat. Again, there's a bend and a slide down. So here I will just put let me get my note back. A tiny note there just to bring that pitch up. And I would leave that until it gets down to the G flat here. I would just put a little bit there just so the center of the tune where the tone is, the pitch is the most important after the slide, I would just strengthen that there. And this is the singer here. She actually taught me this. She's a Nashville pro. Very, very hardworking Nashville player. But she showed me that the way a lot of people down there tune is they will draw a note over the whole thing. And they will slow it down first. So it's very subtle, like this.
Mm-hmm.
Then they will draw a second note over, part of the middle, but they'll leave the beginning of the end of the note the same. And then they will tighten that up.
Interesting.
Make that more in tune.
So kind of give a swipe to the whole note in general, improve it,
Yes.
and then go to the real bad spot and do a little more work on it.
And then in the middle of the note, they will go all the way up. Because in this situation, when it goes so fast, you will hear that perfect pitch in the middle so quickly, but the ends are not perfect. So then you won't hear it, but they want it super in tune. And this is how they get it without getting an effect on it.
Yeah, that sort of Nashville AutoTune sound that you hear these days, where you can
Yeah.
feel the AutoTune, but you don't necessarily like hear the blips and the bloops. They're leaving those attacks alone, and they're really just focusing on the meat of the vowel, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's great. That's some good stuff, Henrik.
Yeah, so graph mode is very powerful, and it's really up to you to learn these three tools you have to use to draw various things. You can import things from the auto. If you have some settings in here you like, you can go back here and say, okay, create curves from auto mode. So you just import it, and then you have a starting point. Yeah, so this is a very, very powerful tool. I mean, it takes a little bit to learn, but it's like anything, like any big graphical editor, just like if you use some of the other pitch correction plugins out there that have that, it'll take a little bit to get there, but the more you tinker with it and get what you like it to sound like for what you do, you know, the easier it'll get.
Yeah, just much more control using the graphic mode, and really it's about less is more. You can just really kind of choose the notes that are bothersome or something that's distracting you, fix just those up and leave the rest of it pretty natural if you're going for a more organic sort of sound.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I think that, and in my opinion, that's been the greatest asset of AutoTune over, I mean, I first saw it in about 97, 98, and late 90s and the early 2000s, that's the period of AutoTune abuse where I think many producers and engineers were trying to figure out how to be subtle with it. You know, like I think we fell in love with the sound a little bit. We made it a little too strong. You hear some of those albums from that genre and you're like, whoa, they really weren't holding back with the AutoTune. But I think as we've improved our ears, as the program's improved, and this is what I was going to say about AutoTune, there seems to be a real musicality to it. You know, one of the things I use it most for is that, you know, getting my double a little more in tune with my lead vocal. And when you do that together, when you're using a double and you get that chorusing, like AutoTune doesn't destroy that chorusing that you have. If you track something and it's chorusing pretty well because of those differences in pitch and time, AutoTune might tighten it up a little bit, but it adds a nice color to it. Like there's a nice sound to the filter of AutoTune, where other plugins, I can't say that is the case, you know, and I'm not here to like slag on other products, but I've tried all the tuning plugins, and I think that's really what gives Antares and a good job that the company does, is it gives a really nice just musical sound to the pitch correction, which others are a little more ham-fisted. They're not as elegant. They can't handle the swoops and the attacks, or just the sound of the chorusing isn't as musical to me. And I think that's one reason why AutoTune's been on top of the mountain for a while, and the reason why it's so popular.
I might be biased.
You guys might be a little biased. But I'm telling you, as somebody that's used it all, and I have opinions on most of them, but I think that's real reason why is that chorusing, when it's set right and you get a well-performed chorus vocal and you got the double in there, like nothing beats the sound of AutoTune in that sense, you know. So great work to you guys. I think we only have a couple minutes left. Was there any final questions or anything from the chat?
We have 2 questions.
2 questions, all right.
One was just curious if you could do automation in AutoTune.
Can we do automation?
Yeah.
Yes.
Sure. And do it in graph mode, like, you know, when you draw in it, but outside of graph mode, you sure can. So this is like any other plugin in Pro Tools or Logic or whatever DAW you're using. Say, for example, all right, we can do it on this track. So in Pro Tools, you can
Control.
you can go in and you can select, you know, if you know the shortcut for it, Control Option Command in Pro Tools, and click on a parameter, brings up this little window, and then you say enable automation for retune speed. Now I've enabled the automation for retune speed. If I go to my track, and here's my retune speed.
There's the automation.
So,
yep.
Yep.
So yeah, any one of those parameters that you can see on the GUI right now can mostly be automated. Another nice little trick is the Control Option Command, and click on I think where it says Auto on the plugin, and it'll enable everything on the plugin.
Yes, it will. That's right.
Everything can be enabled then if you want that. But yeah, like you said, any parameter on there that we're seeing in the basic mode, not the graph tune, you can automate. What was the last question, if we have time? Sure.
The next question is, it's a 2-parter. They're wondering if AutoTune does a process of elimination in order to determine the key, and is there any plans for the plugin to be ARA
great question.
compatible?
2 questions. The first one was, does it do a process of elimination to figure out the key, or can you speak about how AutoKey figures out the key? And the second question is there going to be ARA mode, ARA2 mode, I guess it is, for Pro Tools anytime soon?
So the first thing, how it AutoTune itself only, or AutoKey, I guess, that figures out the key. I don't know exactly how that algorithm works. It's a algorithm that we have licensed, but I mean, we'll hear the chord progression and then pick out the key based on, if you play one chord into it, it will just say, okay, it's a G chord or it's a C chord. But if it's a multiple chords in a key, then it will say, okay, these chords make up the key of C major or D minor or whatever that might be. And then that sends it to AutoTune when you do it. As far as ARA2, we do ARA2 in other hosts like Studio One and Logic and Cubase.
Mm-hmm.
We don't do it yet with Pro Tools, and I don't know, since it's a product that hasn't been released yet, and if we're going to do it or not, it's not something I don't really have any information on it, and I can't really talk about it if I knew it.
Gotcha.
So yeah, I would like to see it personally because I use I use Pro Tools myself, so it would be very handy if we had it for me, but we don't at the moment.
It's good. We can blame it on Avid. It's all right.
No.
Yeah, I'm sure it'll come at some point. I mean, I've used it in Logic, and it's been great in Logic. And like you said, it's in Studio One, it's in Cubase, it's in other DAWs. Sometimes Pro Tools just takes a little longer to implement things. And but what I will say about Avid, when they do implement it, it's usually implemented pretty well. So hopefully we will see that soon. Anything you want to add, Jon, or anything?
No, like I said, it's a real pleasure to be back and happy to represent AutoTune at my alma mater.
Yeah, it's got to be fun for Jon. And again, Jon's an alumnus here, so he went through the same regiment that all you went through many years ago, and through hard work, he's still working in the industry and getting work with a great company like Antares. Did you have anything else you wanted to add, Henrik, or?
No, unless there's any questions, but
Any more questions out there?
No further questions at this time.
No further questions. I really do appreciate all the students for popping in. I think Jon and Henrik for giving us this overview. It's just been really nice, and hopefully we'll have Antares back again. You know, we have the tech fairs coming up. We have a Hall of Fame, so hopefully we can fly Henrik out from Santa Cruz, get a little budget in,
Right.
take it to Disney and do the Florida thing, man. No, it's great.
Thanks for having us. Yeah.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Thanks for coming. And I guess we'll just we can read the little outro here. Sorry, head upside down. That's all the time we have today. Hope you enjoyed hearing from the guys from Antares today and learning about AutoTune. We've enjoyed talking about it. Remember that the Audio Production Town Hall is a monthly event, ordinarily happening on the last Monday of the class month. Keep an eye on Full Sail 1 for information about next month's Town Hall. All right. Thanks for joining, everybody. Have a great week and have a happy holidays.